Hello and welcome along to the Westminster Roundup with the Sport and Recreation Alliance. I'm your host, Alex Sexton, and I'm delighted to once again be joined by the Alliance's Public Affairs Manager, Ryan McCulloch. How are you, Ryan?
I'm very well, Alex. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Well rested after what was quite an incredible week last week. Lots going on in Westminster and in Parliament. Obviously, the budget was announced by the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and there's lots for us to dig into. So let's kick off right away and head there. What were the headlines for the sector, Ryan?
I think the headlines, Alex, I'll probably start with, and the headlines for the budget generally, really, were the continuing coronavirus support. So the Prime Minister announced the recovery roadmap, as he was calling it, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I think the budget is sort of infilling and matching up to that, if you like. So the roadmap is a staged return, and there will be some businesses, member organisations of ours, who can't open for a number of weeks yet. So there was 2 big announcements there on extensions to existing schemes to support members going forward. The first of which is the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, which we also know as furlough now, word of the year last year, furlough. And that has been extended until the 30th of September. So initially, it's going to be on the same terms that it is now. It's 80% of wages paid by the government to keep kind of jobs going. There'll be a small change to that in July when employers are then asked to pay 10%. And then from August to September, employers will be asked to contribute a little bit more towards that 20% up until this furlough scheme is currently scheduled to end on the 30th of September. So at output, if you like, for an employee, it's still 80%. But for our member organisations who have employees on furlough, it will be a 10% contribution from July, and then from August, a 20% contribution to that 80% figure up until the 30th of September. Equally, in terms of those who are self-employed, the Chancellor announced an extension to the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme. So that is going to be 2 more grant payments. So there have been 3 already. There's going to be 2 more. The first is going to be along the lines of what we've already seen, and will cover the months from February to April. And that will be a payment of 80% of 3 months average profits for that period. And that's capped at a limit of £7,500. And then there will be a 5th grant, but the Chancellor was at pains to stress that that is going to be based on need, obviously, as we will by then hopefully have seen more of an easement. So some businesses will be back. So it's going to be based on need, and that is going to cover the period May to September. And that is going to be in there are going to be 2 qualified criteria for that. If your profits have fallen by over 30% in that period, then you'll be given a grant alongside or along the same lines as the aforementioned grant. I've just talked about the 4th grant, so the 80% 3 month trading profits with a cap of 7.5. If your profits have fallen by less than 30%, you're eligible for a 30% payment on your 3 month trading profits from the government, up to a cap of £2,850. And that will run to the end of September. And crucially, there will be more people included in that now, because it covers the period for anyone who's filed a tax return up to the 2019-20 year. So a tax return that was due to be filed at the beginning of March. So anybody who set up essentially as a newly self-employed last year will also be eligible for those 4th and what the Chancellor is suggesting will be 5th and final grants. And at the moment, both of those supports end at the end of September. And the government are hoping that we will have a fully reopened economy by then. But of course, I assume those things are subject to change, as is the roadmap. But at the moment, end of September.
And potentially great news for some of our member organisations who have been furloughing staff and using that system, but also for the 100,000 self-employed individuals we have in our workforce. So some good early signals there. Were there any other wins, especially around the Sports Recovery Fund, that the Alliance and some friends in the sector have been working on?
Yeah, Alex, so I think I'll start with that. That's actually a good point. There are, and this is going to be a brag for the Alliance now, but there are a few things that we put in our budget submission and things that we've campaigned for with sector partners and with members and others, and some of the great work that's been done there. So the Chancellor announced a £300 million sport recovery package. Some members may remember that there was a winter survival package announced for spectator sports to cover broadly gate receipt losses and any associated spending that they do off the basis of that. So, and that was also 300 million. The Chancellor's announced another 300 million for what they're calling a sport recovery package, which is essentially a second 300 million pound payment. At the moment, there is no news of how that money is going to be apportioned, but that is due to come. We know that cricket, we know that tennis, and we know that horse racing will be getting some, but the government will make announcements in due course about where that money is going to be apportioned and how on that. The second win I think we can probably take is that the government have announced the business rates holiday for eligible retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, which include a lot of our members, facility owner members, will continue in its current form until the end of June. So again, as you'll see, is the pattern really is to get businesses through this roadmap phase. And then that'll be followed by 66% cut in business rates for the period from the 1st of July until the 31st of March next year. And that will be capped at properties worth 2 million per business for properties that were required to close on the 5th of January and 105,000 for any other properties. So I think, given that we asked for that to be extended, that's going to be really beneficial for our members, and also quite generous to have a 2/3 cut until next financial year. So hopefully that will benefit members significantly. One other thing probably to flag up here is that the Chancellor also announced that the government will be providing restart grants for a range of businesses. Gyms and leisure are included in that. So that is an £18,000 payment per premises for the cost of restarting as we come out of lockdown and through the roadmap. So essentially, with your indoor outdoor sport, when you get to your bit of the roadmap, there'll be money available there to cover the cost of reopening. And just on top of that, the government are also putting another 425 million into the discretionary funding pot that local authorities have to give to businesses who are struggling with the cost of reopening and or associated pandemic costs. So there are pots of money there that are also available to members as we start to look to reopen, and some of that was really achieved off the back of lobbying, not just from us but from members, as I say, and sector partners. So we are pleased with some of those announcements.
As you mentioned, some fantastic work from the sector to call for the extension of some of that support and for the introduction of some new support there as well. So fingers crossed, in spring, summer, our members can access some of this financial support and make sure we are ready to reopen. It was interesting filtering through the many pages that came out from the government following the announcement of the budget. A couple of bits that maybe flew in under the radar, but were very interesting for our members. Ryan, talk us through a couple of those.
Yeah, sure. So the first one is one that may not be on everybody's radar, but it was an interesting one that was picked up by some of my colleagues actually on red diesel. So the Chancellor had originally announced plans that he would remove the right for red diesel to be used in the majority of situations from next year, from 2022. And red diesel is used in a lot of agricultural equipment and other equipment, and some of our members in particular for sort of golfing, greenkeeping machinery and certain sailing boats. There is red diesel is the kind of fuel of use. And the Chancellor announced in this budget that community sports clubs would be in a list of exemptions from that going on from 2022. So that will benefit some of those members who have machinery that use red diesel. And that was something we asked for in our response to the government consultation on the issue. So we're obviously really pleased that that exemption has been granted, because that could have been quite costly for some members. And finally, just some more kind of high level money that's out there really. The government have announced that they'll be putting 1.2 million in to mitigate any potential financial impacts of coronavirus on the delivery of the UEFA Women's European Football Championships. And staying on the theme of football, they've announced 2.8 million is being put into a pot for helping to deliver a UK and Ireland joint bid to host the men's FIFA World Cup in 2030. And alongside that, there's 25 million being put in aimed at improving grassroots facilities and grassroots sport, and that will have a primary focus on football, but we'll take a look into that when more information on that's published.
And that's an interesting point you make. There's a lot that's come out of this and a lot to be investigated, but for the latest updates, head over to the COVID-19 news section of the Alliance website and we break down all of those announcements for you, and that page will be updated regularly once we find out more about how you can access some of this funding. But whilst that's what was announced, I know there were some questions we posed before the budget and we didn't necessarily get the answers we were looking for. So what perhaps did our sector miss out on in the budget announcement?
A couple of things, Alex, is the answer to that. And I think while some of the stuff that I've announced is positive, we have to say that there are a couple of things that we missed out on. Two in particular I'm going to highlight. The first one is the cut in VAT that is available to other businesses, a cut up to a rate of 5%. For hospitality businesses. We had asked that be extended to sport and leisure businesses, but the Chancellor sadly did not opt for that. He has maintained it for hospitality, and it will be tapering up again to 12% before going back to the normal rate in next year, I think it is. But unfortunately, didn't extend it to sport. So we would have, and we asked vociferously, but we would like to have seen that in there to benefit some of our members just in the recovery phase. So disappointed with that. One other thing I think that really we would love to have seen in there was some more money put into the National Leisure Recovery Fund. So I talked earlier about the winter survival package, and that was announced alongside 100 million of money from the government for a National Leisure Recovery Fund aimed at leisure centres and leisure facilities to keep them going. And I think we know, and people watching this will know, that we think there needs to be more available for that. And there was no announcement on that from the Chancellor. So we're disappointed to see that. We'll keep our kind of fingers crossed that something may come out in the future, because nothing was actually announced alongside the 300 million that was announced for the sport recovery package this time. So we are disappointed with that one, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
As you touched upon there as well, the conversation with our members and with our sector partners doesn't end just because the budget announcement has come. So if there are any questions off the back of this announcement and of this financial support, please do get in touch with our policy team, and you can reach them via policy@sportandrecreation.org.uk, and we will continue to lobby behind the scenes for all of the support you require. But we will only know what you need by you getting in touch and reaching out to us. So please do stay in contact with our policy team, and we'll be asking the right questions for you in Westminster in the next few months as well. So that's quite a really nice summary of the budget and what comes out of it for the sector and the support we can access. But we know that it's not all about the budget in Westminster at the moment, and there's plenty more going on behind the scenes as that roadmap to recovery really comes into force. So Ryan, please fill us in. What else is happening in Westminster?
Yeah, there's quite a bit going on with sport in Westminster at the minute, I must say, Alex. And actually, it's not so much what we've been doing and are doing as our members have been doing and will be doing. So early in March, the Dcms Select Committee, as I'm sure members know, they're in a long inquiry at the moment, which has taken written evidence probably from a lot of our members on sport in our communities. Two of our members in Street Games and Sported appeared to talk about youth and community sport last week. So that was an interesting session. And if members are interested in that, I'll include the link at the bottom of this when we're finished to the Parliament website to take a look through that. So it's fantastic, obviously, always to see members getting across what they do, but also what they need and what they think the government can support them with. So great to see that from Sported and Street Games. One other thing with the DCMS Select Committee is that they've launched a new inquiry last week on concussion in sport. Now, this obviously won't affect everybody, but contact sports and some others where there is the potential for head injury or head clashes may want to respond to this one. There is a written submission open, the deadline for which is the 30th of March. So if there are any members out there who want to give written evidence to the committee on the issue of concussion in sport, then please do. And again, I'll include the link to the call for evidence at the bottom of this for any members who want to take a look at that. And if there's any questions about that or the sorts of things the committee are looking for, happy to answer those. Just email myself or the policy team. Another plug for members again here in a parliamentary committee. Obviously, the Lords Sport and Recreation Committee goes on every week. Varied though it is, they had the Deputy Prime Minister, who's also the Sports Minister of New Zealand, on last week to talk about the international perspective. But this week they have two of our members also, Ali Oliver from the Youth Sport Trust and Sue Wilkinson, who is the Chief Executive of the Association of Physical Education, both of whom some members will remember were fantastic guests on the APPG last summer, and the focus of that will be on school sport. So looking forward to that one. And again, more links to go in the bottom. I'll put the link through to the Parliament Live page where you can pick that one up at 3:30 on Wednesday if you want to take a look at that one. I think finally something that is not really necessarily parliamentary focused, but is interesting nonetheless for the work that we all do, really, is that it was World Obesity Day last week, and a study was published alongside that and to coincide with that suggested that countries with the highest rates of obesity in the world are the ones with the highest death rates from coronavirus, COVID-19. And it was interesting to hear that Boris Johnson made a comment and a statement on that about what more needs to be done to tackle obesity. And I think we need to be looking at how we can nudge the government towards some of the great work that our sector does and the benefits that physical activity can have in driving that forward, particularly as we look at recovering from the coronavirus pandemic and really trying to place the work that members do at the heart of that, based on that research last week, which again, if members want a more detailed look at that research, I'm sure I can find it and send it across. Please email me.
And if you haven't already as well, do take a look at the Alliance's response statement to the budget, because it mentions the priority that the government have placed on physical activity being used as a tool for us to combat this pandemic and to create a healthier nation in general. So we're really going to hold government to account for that and make sure they're utilising the amazing work being done in the sector as well. And a very small shout out to our membership on my behalf as well. Thank you to everybody that shared the survey for the COVID-19 impact. We are now closed that one, and our friends at Sheffield Hallam University are now looking into that and concluding their findings, and we'll be sharing that report in the next couple of months. So a massive thank you to everybody who shared and got their community clubs to fill that out. We'll be sharing our findings and results from that very shortly with you. Well, that's it for the Westminster Roundup this week. A very, very lengthy review of the budgets and some key work out there and some key financial support that can be accessed as well. As Ryan's touched upon several times there, we'll leave some links down below so you can start looking into anything that you may need support with there. As always, get in touch with the policy team or follow us on Twitter at SportRecTweets for the very latest. Myself and Ryan will be back in a couple of weeks where we'll be looking ahead to the roadmap and the unlocking of the sector and what we're doing to support and how Westminster are helping us out there. But that's it from myself and from Ryan. Please do take care for now.